I sacrificed my childhood to save my younger sister from our abusive parents. But when our mom remarried someone richer, my sister flipped the narrative and publicly claimed I kidnapped her. She went back to them, and within a year was calling me, begging me to save her. Once again, I was 12 when my parents laid hands on my younger sister for the first time. I was already terrified of them, but now I realized how I felt didn't matter. I needed to protect her. For my entire teenage life, I worked, shielded her from arguments, and spent all my time being the best big brother I could. Ava was the most important person in my life. She didn't have any other friends, only me, so I swore to never leave her. Mom and Dad yelled and hit a lot, but we made it through. We moved out when I was 18. Ava enrolled into a new school, found new hobbies. She loved her new life. At least that's what I thought. Everything changed a year later when she was 13. Mom finally left Dad and remarried a man named Mark. Mark was wealthy, extremely wealthy. Overnight, their lives became glamorous. Mom posted pictures online, showing off designer clothes, vacations, and cars. And soon, Ava started following Mom's posts obsessively. She started talking about the amazing new life Mom had. I warned her, reminded her that Mom hit us too, but that didn't deter her. Very soon, packages started arriving at my door. Expensive clothes, electronics, and jewelry from Mark. All for Ava. Her face lit up every time, eyes widening at each new treasure, fingers tracing the designer labels with reverence. Slowly, she spent less time talking with me and more time glued to her new phone, the blue glow illuminating her face late into the night. She began staying late at school and not telling me what she was doing. I worried constantly, but didn't know how to fix it. One evening, she came home late, cheeks flushed, avoiding my gaze. I asked where she'd been, but she refused to answer, her silence hanging between us like a wall. Something felt very off. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications, the constant buzzing pulling me from sleep. Turns out, Ava had posted something online, accusing me of kidnapping and manipulating her into moving out with me. My heart dropped as I read her words, each one a knife twisting deeper. She painted a picture of me as controlling, abusive, and twisted. She claimed I lied about everything. She said she missed her real family and begged people to help her escape me. Before I could even process it, police showed up at our apartment, the sharp knock making my stomach plummet. They took Ava away, her face blank as she walked past me without a glance. In just days, my life unraveled. Friends distanced themselves, their texts becoming shorter before stopping altogether. Co-workers whispered behind my back, conversations halting when I entered rooms, and soon my boss quietly asked me to leave my job, his eyes never quite meeting mine. Within weeks, Ava moved in with Mom and Mark. She began once again posting online, but now she was sharing happy pictures of her luxurious life, crediting Mark for rescuing her and publicly calling me a monster. Strangers would DM to threaten me, their words vicious and cruel. This was my life for 3 years, until Ava turned 16. That's when I got a call from her. "Mom's hitting me again. Please help," she cried, her voice small and broken. I woke to the sound of my phone ringing. Squinting at the screen, I saw Melissa's name and immediately sat up, my back protesting from the uncomfortable couch. "They've filed a missing person report," she said without preamble, her voice tight with urgency. "Police will likely be at your apartment today." I glanced at the clock. 7:13 a.m., the red numbers harsh in the dim room. "What do we do?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, sleep rough and anxious. "I found a safe house through my network. Pack essentials only. Be there by noon." Melissa's tone left no room for questions. "I'll text you the address." After hanging up, I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, watching Ava sleep. She looked younger in sleep, vulnerable in a way that twisted something inside me. I remembered countless nights checking on her in our childhood home, making sure she was safe, the bruises on her arms fading from purple to yellow. "Ava," I said, gently shaking her shoulder, feeling the delicate bones beneath my fingers. "We need to go." She blinked awake, confusion quickly replaced by fear as reality rushed back, her eyes darting to the window. "They're coming? Police might be. We have somewhere else to go." We packed quickly, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and the few important documents I kept. As I zipped my duffel bag, there was a sharp knock at the door, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. Ava froze, her eyes wide with panic, a t-shirt in her hands trembling. I motioned for her to stay quiet and moved to the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway, faces impassive. My heart hammered against my ribs, blood rushing in my ears. "Fire escape," I whispered, pointing to the window in my bedroom. We slipped out silently, the metal cold beneath our hands, descending the fire escape as quickly as we dared. I could hear the officers knocking more insistently now, calling my name, the sound following us down like a threat. At the bottom of the fire escape, we hurried to my car parked in the back lot, gravel crunching under our feet. "Duck down until we're clear," I instructed as we pulled away, the engine's rumble seeming too loud in the morning quiet. The safe house was a small apartment above a bookstore in a quiet neighborhood across town. The owner, Elaine, was a retired social worker who occasionally helped Melissa with emergency placements. She greeted us with a grim smile and showed us to a modest 1-bedroom unit, the smell of old books and coffee lingering in the air. "No one knows about this place except Melissa and me," she assured us, her weathered hands smoothing the faded quilt on the bed. "You should be safe here for now." That afternoon, Melissa arrived with paperwork for an emergency guardianship petition, her briefcase bulging with forms. "We need to document everything," she explained, spreading papers across the small dining table, the legal jargon swimming before my eyes. "Ava, I need you to write down specific instances of abuse. Dates if you can remember them. What happened? Who was present?" Ava nodded, her face pale but determined, knuckles white around the pen. "Will I have to see them? In court?" Melissa hesitated, adjusting her glasses. "Possibly, but we'll try to avoid that." As Ava wrote, her hands sometimes trembling so badly she had to stop, I felt a mixture of emotions churning inside me. Anger at what she'd endured, hot and sharp in my chest. Guilt that I hadn't somehow prevented it, heavy in my stomach. And still, beneath it all, that persistent hurt from her betrayal, a dull ache that never quite left. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Police came to the warehouse looking for you. Boss told them you called in sick. Be careful." The words sent a chill through me. That evening, after Melissa left with the completed paperwork, Ava and I ate takeout in awkward silence. The small apartment felt claustrophobic with all the unspoken unspoken words between us, the air thick with tension. Why did you do it? I finally asked, the question that had haunted me for 3 years, burning in my throat. Why did you believe them over me? Ava set down her fork, the metal clinking against the cheap plate, her eyes fixed on the table, tracing the wood grain. It wasn't all at once. It started with little things. Mom would call and say she missed me, that she changed. Mark would send gifts with notes about how they wanted to be a family. She swallowed hard, the sound audible in the quiet room. Then they started saying things about you, that you were controlling me, isolating me, that real brothers let their sisters have friends, have nice things. You had friends at school, I said, my voice tight, the lie sticking in my throat. We both knew she'd struggled to connect with others, and I bought you things when I could afford it. The memory of working double shifts to buy her a birthday present flashed through my mind. I know that now, she whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. But they kept saying it, over and over. Mom would cry about how much she'd changed, how much she regretted everything, and I wanted to believe her. So you accused me of abuse, the exact thing I protected you from for years. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Tears spilled down her cheeks, catching the dim light. They told me what to say, coached me, said it was the only way I could come live with them, have a normal life. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I was stupid and selfish. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. They monitored everything, my phone, computer, who I talked to, and then when Mom started hitting me again, I stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, needing space, the walls suddenly too close. I'm going to take a shower. Under the hot water, I let my own tears come, mixing with the spray, the sound masking my ragged breathing. 3 years of pain, of questioning myself, of rebuilding a life from scratch, all because my sister had chosen luxury over truth, over me, the brother who'd sacrificed everything for her. When I emerged, skin pink from the heat, Ava was sitting on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, making herself small. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly, voice barely audible over the hum of the ancient refrigerator. I just want you to know how sorry I am, for everything. I nodded stiffly, throat tight. We should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be complicated. The next morning brought news from Melissa. The court had scheduled an emergency hearing for the following week. Until then, we were in limbo, Ava technically still under our mother and Mark's guardianship, but protected by the pending petition. They've hired Harrison Reeves, Melissa told us over the phone, her voice grim. He's one of the top family law attorneys in the state. My stomach sank, acid rising in my throat. We can't afford someone like that. I found a lawyer who'll take the case pro bono, Catherine Chen. She's good, specializes in abuse cases. The name offered a small flicker of hope. 3 days into our stay at the safe house, Ava's phone, which had been turned off since we left my apartment, pinged with a notification. She'd turned it on briefly to transfer photos of her bruises to Melissa, the purple-green marks stark against her pale skin. It's Mom, she said, her voice shaking as she showed me the screen, fingers trembling. The message was eerily calm. Sweetheart, we're so worried. Whatever your brother has told you, please know we love you and just want you home. Mark has been beside himself. He's even offering to buy you that car you wanted for your birthday early. Please come home. Before I could respond, another message appeared. If you're afraid of him, just go to any store or restaurant and tell someone you need help. They'll call the police. The calculated manipulation made my blood boil, heat rising up my neck. Turn it off, I said, the words coming out sharper than intended. They might be able to track it. Too late. Barely an hour later, Elaine called up from the bookstore, her voice a harsh whisper. There's a man asking questions, showing pictures of both of you. Says he's a private investigator. My heart raced, adrenaline flooding my system. We need to leave, now. We slipped out the back entrance as Elaine distracted the PI at the front of the store, the smell of dust and old paper thick in the narrow hallway. With nowhere else to go, I drove us to Jasmine's apartment on the other side of town, the car silent except for the sound of our breathing. Just for tonight, I promised when she opened her door, surprise and concern on her face. We'll figure something out tomorrow. That night, crammed into Jasmine's spare room with Ava, I lay awake planning our next move, the ceiling fan casting shifting shadows. Mark clearly had resources we couldn't match. Private investigators, expensive lawyers, possibly connections with local police. Our only advantage was that Ava was 16 now, old enough that courts might consider her preference. They found us so quickly, Ava whispered in the darkness, her voice small. What if they find us here too? They won't, I said with more confidence than I felt, staring at the crack in the ceiling. We'll be more careful. The next morning, Catherine Chen agreed to meet us at a coffee shop near her office. She was younger than I expected, but her sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor were reassuring, her handshake firm. I've reviewed your case, she said after introductions, stirring her coffee precisely. It's complicated, but not impossible. The documented abuse is compelling, but we're fighting against significant resources and influence. Mark donates to the police foundation, Ava said quietly, eyes fixed on her untouched muffin. He has friends in the department. That's why I was afraid to report the abuse. Catherine nodded grimly, lips pressing into a thin line. Unfortunately, that tracks with what I've seen in cases like this. Money talks. She turned to me, gaze direct. You need to understand something. They're going to paint you as the villain again. They'll bring up the previous accusations, suggest you've manipulated Ava into making these claims. But that's not true, Ava protested, voice rising slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. Truth and what can be proven in court aren't always the same thing, Catherine said gently, placing a hand on Ava's arm. We need to be prepared for everything they might throw at us. As we left the meeting, my phone rang. Another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, the cold plastic pressed to my ear. I want to talk. Mark's smooth voice came through like oil on water. Just you and me, man to man. I have nothing to say to you, I replied, my grip tightening on the phone until my knuckles whitened. I think you do. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. Come alone, or I call the police and report you for kidnapping. Again, the threat hung in the air between us. I looked at Ava, who was watching me with worried eyes, biting her lower lip. I have to meet him, I said after hanging up, the decision settling like a stone in my gut. No! She grabbed my arm, fingers digging into my sleeve. It's a trap. He'll hurt you or have you arrested. It's a public park. He can't do anything there. I tried to sound confident, though doubt gnawed at me. And we need to know what he wants. Catherine advised strongly against the meeting, her voice sharp with concern. But I went anyway, drawn by a need to confront the man who'd helped destroy my life. Mark was waiting on a bench overlooking the river, looking every bit the successful businessman in his tailored suit, not a hair out of place. He smiled when he saw me, as if we were old friends, teeth too white and perfect. Thank you for coming, he said, gesturing for me to sit, his gold watch catching the sunlight. I thought we should clear the air. I remained standing, hands in pockets to hide their trembling. Say what you need to say, he sighed, his expression shifting to one of practiced concern, the kind seen in political advertisements. I understand your position. You care about your sister, but this situation has gotten out of hand. The situation where you and my mother physically abuse her, that situation, my voice was steady, despite the anger coursing through me. me. His smile tightened, a flash of something cold in his eyes. Teenagers often exaggerate. Ava has always been dramatic. Surely you remember that from when you lived together. I remember the bruises our parents left on her, the same kind of bruises she has now. The memory of those marks, documented in clinical photographs, made my stomach turn. Mark leaned forward, dropping the friendly facade, his voice lowering. Let me be clear. Your sister belongs with her mother and me. We can provide for her in ways you simply cannot. The best schools, opportunities, connections that will set her up for life. And all it costs is her safety and dignity. The words came out bitter, tasting like copper. His eyes hardened, the mask slipping further. I'm trying to be reasonable here. We're prepared to be generous. Say, $50,000 to compensate for any inconvenience. The offer stunned me into momentary silence. The sum more money than I'd ever seen. He was trying to buy me off, like Ava was merchandise to be traded. Ava isn't for sale, I finally managed, disgust rising in my throat. Everyone has a price. He stood, straightening his jacket with manicured hands. Think about it. $50,000 could change your life, get you out of that warehouse job, maybe back to school. All you have to do is convince Ava to drop these ridiculous allegations and come home. And if I refuse? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. His smile returned, cold and confident, like a predator certain of its prey. Then we proceed to court, where a judge will hear about how you've been twice accused of manipulating your sister, how you have no stable home to offer her, barely make enough to support yourself, how you've interfered with her education by hiding her away. He stepped closer, cologne overwhelming. And then there's the matter of the outstanding warrants. My blood ran cold, a chill spreading through my body despite the warm day. What warrants? The ones that will be filed if certain items go missing from our home, valuable items that might be found in your possession. He shrugged, the gesture casual but his eyes sharp. Police take theft very seriously, especially when it involves valuable property. The threat was clear, hanging in the air between us. He was willing to frame me if necessary, to use his connections to fabricate evidence. Think about my offer, he said, turning to leave, gravel crunching under his expensive shoes. It's the best outcome for everyone, including Ava. I returned to Jasmine's apartment shaken, the conversation replaying in my mind. Ava and Catherine were waiting anxiously, tension visible in their postures. He offered me money to convince you to go back, I told them, collapsing onto the couch, the cushions sagging beneath me, and threatened to frame me for theft if I didn't. Catherine's expression darkened, a muscle twitching in her jaw. This changes things. We need to document this conversation immediately. I recorded it, I admitted, pulling out my phone, the small act of foresight my only advantage. I wasn't sure what he might say. Catherine's eyes widened, a spark of hope lighting them. That's potentially very helpful, depending on the recording laws in this state. She took my phone, fingers already tapping. Let me listen and see what we can use. That night, Ava had a nightmare. I woke to her crying out, thrashing in her sleep, the sound piercing the darkness. When I gently shook her awake, she looked at me with such raw fear that it broke something inside me, a crack in the wall I'd built. You're safe, I murmured, the words automatic, familiar from our childhood. I'm here. She clung to me, sobbing against my shoulder like she used to as a child, her tears hot through my thin t-shirt. I'm so sorry, she kept repeating, the words muffled against my chest. I ruined everything. I ruined your life. I held her until she calmed, my own emotions a tangled mess. The anger and hurt were still there, but alongside them was a fierce protectiveness I couldn't deny. Whatever had happened between us, she was still my sister. Still, the little girl I'd sworn to protect. The next day brought a new complication. Jasmine received a visit from police officers asking if she'd seen us. She lied smoothly, but called immediately after they left, her voice tight with urgency. They're watching my building, she warned. You need to leave, now. We slipped out through a neighbor's apartment and down a service elevator, the musty smell of the rarely used space filling our nostrils. Catherine had arranged for us to stay with another client of hers who had a vacant rental property, a small house on the outskirts of town. The house was sparsely furnished but secure, with good locks and a privacy fence. For the first time since Ava's call, I felt we could breathe, the constant tension easing slightly. That evening, as we ate dinner at the kitchen table, Ava looked up suddenly, fork pausing halfway to her mouth. Do you ever think about what life would have been like if Mom and Dad hadn't been the way they were? The question caught me off guard, memories flooding back unbidden. Sometimes, I admitted, setting down my own fork, I think about what it would be like to have normal parents, ones who came to school events and helped with homework instead of hitting us, she finished quietly, her gaze distant. I used to pretend, when I first moved in with Mom and Mark, I pretended we were a normal family, that the past never happened. And now? I asked, curious despite myself. She pushed food around her plate, the scrape of fork against ceramic loud in the quiet room. Now I know better. There's no such thing as forgetting the past. It follows you. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a wisdom beyond her years. That's why what I did to you was so awful. I knew the truth and chose to lie anyway. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to say it was okay, but it wasn't okay. It might never be okay. The court date approached with agonizing slowness. Catherine worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, preparing Ava for testimony, building a case that might stand against Mark's expensive legal team. 5 days before the hearing, my mother showed up at the warehouse where I worked. I was loading boxes onto a truck when Jasmine rushed over, face flushed with alarm. Your mom's here, she hissed, glancing over her shoulder. At the front office. I froze, a box half lifted in my arms, the weight suddenly unbearable. How did she find me? I don't know, but she's demanding to see you. Says it's a family emergency. My first thought was Ava. Had they somehow found her? But no, Ava was safe at the house, working on her statement for court. I set down the box and followed Jasmine to the front, heart pounding against my ribs. My mother stood in the reception area, looking out of place in her designer clothes, diamonds glinting at her ears. When she saw me, her expression shifted from impatience to something softer, a mask sliding into place. Wayne, she said, using my name in a way that felt wrong coming from her, like she was trying it on. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, I replied, keeping my distance, the smell of her expensive perfume bringing back unwanted memories. It's about Ava. She's making a terrible mistake. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a confidential murmur. She's confused, Wayne. You know how impressionable she is. The audacity of her statement left me momentarily speechless, anger rising hot and fast. Confused about the bruises you left on her? Those seemed pretty clear to me. Her face hardened, the mask slipping for just a second, revealing the woman I remembered from childhood. Teenagers exaggerate. Ava has always been difficult. Surely you remember. What I remember is protecting her from you and Dad. What I remember is you hitting her so hard she had bruises for weeks. The words came out sharp, cutting through the pretense. She glanced around, aware of the receptionist pretending not to listen, her eyes narrowing. This isn't the place. Come have coffee with me. Just hear me out. Number. The word came out firm, final, the door closing. I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Her facade cracked. just for a moment, revealing the familiar anger beneath, a flash of the mother I knew. "You're making a mistake. Mark is trying to be reasonable, but his patience isn't endless. There are things you don't understand. I understand enough. Please leave before I call security." The threat hung between us, charged with years of unspoken history. As she turned to go, expensive heels clicking on the linoleum, she paused, looking back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She'll leave you again, you know, as soon as something better comes along. That's who she is. That's who I raised her to be." The words hit like a physical blow, not because I believed them, but because a small part of me feared they might be true. The doubt a seed she'd planted years ago. That night, I recounted the encounter to Ava and Catherine, the memory still raw. Ava's face crumpled at my mother's words, pain etching itself across her features. "That's not true," she whispered, hands clenched in her lap. "I'm not like her." Catherine was more concerned with the practical implications, her mind already calculating strategies. "They're escalating. The hearing is getting closer, and they're getting desperate. We need to be extra careful." 2 days later, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line simply read, "Ava." Inside was a video file and a short message. "Is this the sister you're fighting for?" With a sense of dread, I clicked the video, the screen illuminating with images that made my stomach clench. It showed Ava at what appeared to be a party, laughing with a group of teenagers I didn't recognize. She was holding a drink, clearly intoxicated, eyes unfocused. The video cut to her kissing a boy, then to her crying and arguing with someone off camera. The timestamp showed it was from last year, when she was living with Mark and my mother. Another email arrived minutes later. "There's more where that came from. Substances, alcohol, sneaking out. Is this really about protecting her, or is it about your own ego? Think carefully about the court hearing." I didn't tell Ava about the emails. I forwarded them to Catherine instead, who confirmed what I suspected. They were trying to intimidate me, to make me question supporting Ava. "This is actually helpful to our case," Catherine said, her voice reassuring through the phone. "It shows they're willing to use manipulation and intimidation tactics." The night before the hearing, Ava and I sat on the porch of the rental house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air was heavy with unspoken words, crickets chirping in the growing darkness. "Whatever happens tomorrow," I finally said, breaking the silence, "I want you to know I believe you. About the abuse, I believe you." She looked at me, tears shimmering in her eyes, catching the last light. "But not about being sorry," I sighed, searching for the right words, the truth complicated and painful. "I believe you're sorry. I just don't know if that changes anything." "I understand," she whispered, hugging herself against the evening chill. "After what I did, I wouldn't forgive me either." We sat in silence as darkness fell, each lost in our own thoughts about the day ahead, the weight of tomorrow pressing down on us. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways, footsteps bouncing off high ceilings. Catherine met us at the entrance, professional in a navy suit, her expression determined, briefcase clutched like a shield. "Remember what we discussed?" she told Ava, straightening the girl's collar with a maternal gesture. "Just tell the truth. Don't let them confuse you or put words in your mouth." Inside the courtroom, Mark and my mother were already seated with their attorney, Harrison Reeves. Mark looked confident in an expensive suit, my mother beside him in a conservative dress that screamed, "concerned parent." They both watched as we entered, Mark's expression neutral, my mother's eyes narrowing slightly, her painted lips pressed thin. The hearing was closed to the public due to Ava's age, which was a relief. I couldn't imagine going through this with an audience, our pain on display. Judge Penelope Martinez entered, a stern-looking woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She reviewed the case briefly before addressing the room, her voice carrying authority. "This is an emergency guardianship hearing regarding Ava Mitchell, age 16. I'll hear from both parties, but I want to be clear. My only concern is the welfare of the minor in question." Harrison Reeves went first, painting a picture of Mark and my mother as devoted parents concerned about their troubled daughter. He described me as unstable, with a history of manipulating Ava. He even suggested I might be the one responsible for her bruises, the accusation making my blood boil. "Your Honor, we have documentation that the petitioner has a history of controlling behavior toward his sister," Reeves said smoothly, his voice practiced and persuasive. 3 years ago, Ava made serious allegations against him, resulting in her removal from his care. My fists clenched under the table, nails digging into palms. Catherine squeezed my arm in warning, her touch grounding me. When it was our turn, Catherine methodically presented the evidence of abuse, photographs of Ava's bruises, medical records, and the recording of my conversation with Mark, which the judge allowed despite Reeves's objections, his face reddening. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Catherine continued, her voice clear and confident, "we have evidence of witness intimidation and attempted bribery." She presented the emails and detailed my mother's visit to my workplace, building a picture of systematic manipulation. Throughout it all, Ava sat rigid beside me, her face pale but composed, hands folded tightly in her lap. When it was her turn to speak, she stood with visible effort, shoulders squared despite her trembling. "3 years ago, I lied," she began, her voice small but clear in the quiet courtroom. "My mother and Mark convinced me to accuse my brother of things he never did. They promised me a better life, and I was young and stupid enough to believe them." She described the gradual escalation of abuse in their home, the controlling behavior, the isolation, the physical violence. Her voice broke only once, when describing a particularly brutal incident where our mother had thrown her against a wall for coming home late, the memory visibly painful. "My brother protected me our whole childhood," she finished, tears streaming down her face, voice steady despite them. "He gave up everything for me, and I betrayed him, but he still came when I needed help, even after what I did. That's who he is. That's who I want to be with." Reeves cross-examined her aggressively, trying to trip her up, suggesting she was lying now as she had before, but Ava remained steady, answering each question with a clarity that made me proud, despite everything, her composure remarkable for her age. When my mother took the stand, she was the picture of maternal concern, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, as she described her worry for Ava, her performance polished. "She's always been troubled," she said, her voice trembling perfectly on cue. "After her father and I divorced, she became even more difficult. We've tried everything, therapy, structure, consequences, but she runs away, makes up stories." "And the bruises?" Catherine asked during cross-examination, voice sharp. "How do you explain those?" My mother's expression hardened momentarily before smoothing into concern again, the transition almost imperceptible. "Ava has always been clumsy, and frankly, she's harmed herself before for attention." The accusation hung in the air, so outrageous I had to bite my tongue to keep from shouting, taste of blood in my mouth. Mark testified last, calm and reasonable, expressing only concern for Ava's well-being. He denied offering me money or threatening me, suggesting I had misinterpreted our conversation, his lies smooth and practiced. "I only wanted to help," he said, looking directly at the judge, sincerity oozing from every word. "We have the resources to get Ava the help she needs. Her brother, while well-intentioned, simply doesn't." After final arguments, Judge Martinez called for a brief recess to review the evidence. As we waited in a small conference room, Ava paced nervously, arms wrapped around herself. "What if they don't believe me?" she whispered, voicing the fear we both shared. What if I have to go back? The judge heard the recording, Catherine reassured her, though tension lined her face. And your testimony was very compelling. We have a strong case. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Martinez's expression gave nothing away, her face a professional mask. I've reviewed the evidence carefully, she began, the room silent, except for her voice. This is a troubling case with serious allegations on both sides. However, the documented injuries, the recorded conversation with Mr. Park, and the pattern of behavior described by multiple witnesses lead me to believe that Ava's current home environment is not safe. My heart leapt, hope surging through me. Beside me, Ava grabbed my hand, her fingers cold, but gripped tight. Therefore, I am granting temporary guardianship to Wayne Mitchell for a period of 6 months, during which time a full investigation will be conducted by family services. Relief flooded through me, a weight lifting from my shoulders. 6 months. We had 6 months. As we left the courtroom, Mark caught my eye across the polished floor. His expression was no longer the polished, confident mask. In just a moment, I saw raw fury before he composed himself, the glimpse chilling. My mother didn't bother hiding her anger, her eyes burning with a familiar rage as she watched us leave, lips pressed into a thin line. This isn't over, Catherine warned as we walked to the parking lot, heels clicking on concrete. The temporary guardianship is a win, but they'll fight the permanent arrangement, and they have resources. But we have the truth, Ava said, sounding more confident than she had in weeks, standing straighter. That night, back at the rental house, we celebrated quietly with takeout pizza, the greasy cardboard boxes a stark contrast to the gravity of the day. Ava seemed lighter, laughing for the first time since she'd called me for help. The sound strange but welcome. What happens now? She asked as we cleaned up, wiping sauce from the counter. With us, I mean. The question I'd been avoiding hung between us. What did happen now? I had temporary guardianship, but what about after that? What about the years of pain between us? I don't know, I admitted, the truth simpler than any comforting lie. One day at a time, I guess. She nodded, accepting the non-answer, understanding in her eyes. I meant what I said in court, about wanting to be like you. You're the best person I know, even after everything. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to embrace the idea of reconciliation, of rebuilding our relationship. But another part, the part still raw from betrayal, held back, protective walls, still high. We should get some sleep, I said finally, avoiding her gaze. It's been a long day. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the unfamiliar shadows playing across it, I made a decision. I would help Ava get safely to adulthood. I would protect her from our mother and Mark. I would make sure she had opportunities for education, for a good life, but I couldn't let her back into my heart. Not fully. The risk was too great, the wound too deep. I would be her guardian, but I couldn't be the brother I once was. That person had died 3 years ago, when she chose luxury over loyalty, the betrayal too fundamental to simply forgive. As if sensing my thoughts, Ava appeared in my doorway, a shadow in the darkness, her silhouette small against the hallway light. I know you can't forgive me, she said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. I wouldn't expect you to, but thank you for helping me anyway. She turned to go, but paused, hand on the doorframe. I love you. I never stopped, even when I was saying those terrible things. I just wanted you to know that. As she disappeared back to her room, I felt tears on my cheeks, hot and unexpected. The road ahead would be complicated. Mark and my mother wouldn't give up easily. The full investigation would mean more hearings, more evidence, more fighting. And beyond that, there was the harder question of what came after. Could you help someone, protect them, even care for them, without truly letting them back in? I didn't know, but I was about to find out, the answer unfolding one day at a time.